Back on the SportsMax zone, it's FIFA World Cup time now. 4 more teams confirming their spots in the last 16 as the final set of group matches began on Tuesday in Qatar. Let's look at the full results from Tuesday and the standings for the completed groups A and B. Ecuador beaten 2-1 by the African champions Senegal. Netherlands 2-0 over Qatar. And the USA in Group B 1-0 over Iran. That was some match. And England with 2 Marcus Rashford goals, getting by Wales by 3-0. So England, USA, and Netherlands and Senegal moving forward from the groups that we saw today. Simon Evans with us as we look back at the action. Simon, your thoughts of what happened today, the Senegal-Ecuador match. Let's start there. Koulibaly, 6-7 internationals, his first goal internationally, and what a precious one it was for him.
Yeah, what a time to get your first international goal. Unbelievable. Senegal deserved it, in my opinion. I mean, Ecuador are a young team, an exciting team. People expected a little bit more from them, perhaps, but maybe this was just a little bit of inexperience showing from them at times. But Senegal, you know, they're really a united side. They work so hard, but they've picked up some injuries. Idrissa Gueye is going to be out for the last 16 game against England, which is a blow for a team, of course, that's already without Sadio Mane. But, you know, well done to Senegal without Mane. There was such a fuss around that. Obviously, people thought that it might, you know, totally kibosh their chances. And in the end, they've come through a pretty tough group.
Yeah, you know, Simon, it was because of Sadio Mane's absence that made me edge Ecuador to be advancing from the group with the Netherlands, because I didn't think that without Sadio Mane, the Senegal team would come through ahead of Ecuador for sure. But I think this may be one of those situations where the coach would have galvanized the team around the fact that people were looking at them and saying, Mane isn't there, so we've got to show them that even though Sadio isn't there, we can still do the job.
Yeah, that's right. And, you know, I think the loss of Idrissa Gueye, the same thing will have to happen again. And I think Kouyaté is also out injured as well. So they've really suffered with the injuries, some key players for them. But they do seem to have, you know, an indomitable spirit. You know, they really work hard. Good technical players as well. You know, a decent side. They're going to give England a real run for their money, that's for sure.
Yeah, and Simon, just a quick comment on Ecuador. What went wrong for them today?
Yeah, I just think, you know, in the final third, it's about, you know, the pressure that they had. And we know they've got such good young wide players and pace they've got, but they're just lacking that little bit of precision in the final third that in these tight, tense games really counts so much.
Yeah, Simon, moving on to the Netherlands game, 2-0 over Qatar, who were already eliminated. Your thoughts on the Netherlands, because I have them going deep into the championship. Your thoughts on their overall group play here in a group that they were expected to top, of course.
They were expected to top, but there were a lot of people pointing at Holland and saying, look, they've not got much up front. You know, they're not potent enough. They're not going to score goals. They look like a complete team. They look like a team that Van Gaal has got them set up in a way that everybody knows their jobs. They move the ball around very well. They look composed all the time, and they do have enough firepower. Now, you know, will that prove to be the case when it comes to those tougher games for them, against tougher defences, perhaps? We'll wait and see, but I think Holland have shown pretty well in the group stages and showing that they might do a little bit more in this tournament that some people, including myself, thought beforehand.
Yeah, and speaking about doing pretty well, Cody Gakpo, have a lot of time for him. Right now, he has 3 goals in the entire World Cup so far. The 23-year-old, you know, getting the opportunity and seizing it.
Yeah, they needed somebody to step up, you know, in the absence of a big name star striker like they've had in the past with Bergkamp and Van Nistelrooy and so on. And, you know, he stepped up with the important goals, and you need that in tournaments. And sometimes, you know, in a World Cup, you get to the end and you look at some of those top scorers in World Cup tournaments, and they're not always the people who we expected to be the top scorer.
Yeah, and Qatar being described as the worst performing World Cup host. Is that an unfair tag?
Well, you know, I mean, bearing in mind that they've had no experience really at this level, and most World Cup hosts beforehand, with the exception perhaps of the USA in '94 and maybe South Africa in 2010, have had quite a lot of World Cup experience. So it was kind of inevitable that they would be one of the weaker hosts in the history of the tournament. But I think, you know, they spent so much money, Qatar, on, never mind all the infrastructure for the hosting of the tournament, just on the team and the academies, and for years and years building up this team, bringing in players and working with them, and playing friendlies and competitions all over the world. And I think they will be very disappointed not to have come out of this tournament with a little bit more to show for themselves.
Yeah, Simon, the Netherlands widely regarded as the best nation never to win a World Cup. Of course, they were runners-up in '74 and '78 and again back in 2010. If you look back at those Dutch teams with Cruyff and Van der Kerkhoff and company back in the '70s, and the 2010 team that lost in the final to Spain, do you think this team matches up that kind of quality in any way, shape or form? I say that to say that the Netherlands didn't win the titles then. How are they going to win with this squad?
Yeah, but sometimes, you know, we talked about it before, sometimes you find that club spirit that you need to come together as a team to win the games you need to win. It's not always about having an all-star lineup. And they certainly had that in the 70s. I mean, there's no comparison at all with that. Yeah. But the 2010 team wasn't, you know, jam-packed full of stars. There were plenty of good players there, but I don't think people really went into that tournament expecting to be, you know, entertained and surprised by Holland. And I think, you know, there's some similarities there with this side. And Van Gaal is a good coach. You know, he's been a little bit seen as yesterday's man in some quarters, but he knows how to set up a team and how to work with Dutch players, and he seems to be getting the results at the moment. So I didn't really expect it. I don't think it's going to be considered one of the great Dutch teams, but you never know. If they go on and win games and grind out results, then they will be.
Yeah, I think it would be the USA they face in the round of 16, I think. So that may be an opportunity for them to creep into the quarterfinals and get themselves closer to the title.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, I watched the US against Iran today, and you know, they're very well set up and defensively. They're hard to break down, the Americans, as Iran found out. So it will be a test of that Dutch firepower, you know, whether they have enough up front, really. But you would think, looking at the two sides, that Holland will start as favourites in that one. And then they're in the quarterfinals of the World Cup, and anything's possible.
Yeah, you just touched on the USA win over Iran today. A 1-0 tense battle. Was that closer than you thought it would have been?
No, it was kind of what I expected, to be honest. I expected it to be very, very tight. It was incredibly tense at the end because the US, for the last 10 minutes, it was only really for the last 10 or 15 minutes that they went into like mass defence mode, really. They had been trying to get a second goal for most of the second half after Pulisic put them in front. But Iran were putting the ball in the box, appealing for every touch, appealing for handballs and pushes. And there was a lot of pressure on the referee, an incredible amount of tension around that game. And in the end, they hung on, really.
Yeah, Pulisic is considered one of the poster boys for USA's football, Simon. And from a club level and international level, I think he probably has just underperformed a bit in the last couple of years. We know sometimes goals can boost a player's confidence. How much do you think his effort today will inspire, you know, some good performances in their next assignment or assignments if they have more than one?
Yeah, although he got injured scoring the goal and had to come off at half-time. And the latest news is he's gone to hospital for some scans on an abdominal injury. So it was a nasty one. He tried to come back out on the field and keep going. And if he's not fit to play on Saturday against the Netherlands, it's a real dilemma for Greg Berhalter, the coach there, because his whole attacking system is set up around Pulisic. And the only player who could do anything similar to him, I think, is Giovanni Reina, who plays in Dortmund, where Pulisic used to play. And Reina, we've only seen him for a few minutes in this tournament. So it'll be interesting what happens there. But the US will certainly be hoping Pulisic recovers quickly and can face the Dutch on Saturday.
Yeah, and before we leave that Iran-USA game, Simon, it was considered a battle of political proportions as well. We know that the players are about football, and when they get onto the field, it's about football and the tactics and the strategy. But how much do you think the political tension surrounding the match played on the players' minds today? Because especially in the last part, when the Iranians were, pressing and getting pretty miserable with the referee and so on, you just got the feeling that the tension was a little bit boiling above, normal levels.
Yeah, but I think they were desperate to succeed. I mean, back in 1998 when they played each other in the French World Cup, I actually went to Iran before that tournament and spent a week in Tehran around the Iranian team and the Iranian fans and so on. And obviously I was looking for a story about them playing the USA and what they thought about the Americans. Even then, back in 1998, I couldn't find anyone who had any real hostility towards the Americans. I think it is something that's really at a sort of governmental regime level rather than inside the Iranian people. There's so much going on in that country. It's a very complex situation and a lot of struggles going on and so on. I think it has been difficult for the Iranian team with that civil unrest or revolt or whatever you want to call it happening back home to totally be focused on the job. But they were really focused today. And I think that tension and that desperation that we saw from them in the last 15 minutes of that game was really about just getting that one goal that they needed to get through, because a draw would have been enough for them.
Yeah, and then Simon, England getting that win today, 3-0 over Wales. You get the sense that Marcus Rashford is extremely happy. He snatched 2 goals today, and he just looks, very happy, very content since he has come back into the England setup.
Yeah, he does. His first goal was an absolutely brilliant free kick, blasted it home. Second goal he scored was pretty good as well. Phil Foden there scoring in between those 2 Rashford goals. And that front line they played Kane as the number 9 and then Rashford and Foden off him. I really like the look of that front 3. I think that, sometimes a coach can stumble across a formation in the middle of a World Cup. And I think maybe there was a case of resting players, resting Saka and so on, and resting Sterling. But I don't know, I like that front 3. It's going to be difficult for Southgate to leave Rashford out after that, and Foden as well, scoring and making things happen as well. So that looks like a front 3 that could go really deep in the tournament, and I'm not sure that the previous version did.
Yeah, and Wales would feel as if, they got the opportunity, they waited so long for the opportunity, and they didn't make the most of it. I've been seeing some trending comments, Gareth Bale, a passenger.
Yeah, I think he had 7 touches before he went off injured. He hasn't been fit in Major League Soccer this season. He hasn't looked anywhere near being ready to make a big impact during this World Cup. Wales have really, I think, had a disappointing tournament. They expected a bit more, probably unrealistic in a way. I think Wales' big moment for that team and that generation really came at the Euros 4 or 5 years ago in France, when they went all the way to the semi-finals, and they never looked anything like that side.
Yeah, I know a couple of England fans, Simon. And there were moments today that they looked pretty decent. There was a shot that Foden took from inside the box over the top a bit, but the build-up, pretty Arsenal looking with some deft back heels and so on. It's a pity that one wasn't finished off in the back of the net. It looked sweet.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm saying about, when you play with Rashford and Foden, you bring movement into your side, and you bring technical quality that they both have. I mean, I'm a massive fan of Foden. I've watched him since he was coming into the City side, and he does things that other players can't do. And Rashford is a brilliant player who went off the rails, purely in a football sense, just wasn't performing to his level with all the pressure and stress at Manchester United. And he seems to be back and doing the kind of things we know he can do. So. Yeah. There's a little bit of cause for optimism around England there. Yeah,
I think I agree with you. Not that I'm backing them to win, but I think...
Me neither, but, you can be optimistic.
Yes. You're not going to go away from us, though, Simon, because we want to have a look at the schedule for Wednesday, which we'll do after this. But let's just go to the break with a look at the Group A and Group B tables, and just the confirmation of the teams that have advanced to the round of 16. Netherlands on top, undefeated, 7 points. Senegal moving through with them on 6 points, 2 wins and 1 loss for them. Ecuador and Qatar. I was about to say going home, but Qatar already home.
Oh.
Group B has England and the USA formalising their entry into the round of 16. The English team undefeated, or US undefeated as well, but with 2 draws, only 1 win for the USA, and Iran and Wales bottom of the table. We go to break. When we come back, we take a look at what happens on Wednesday in Qatar. Back in a moment.